So for years, my jazz and R&B chords sounded kind of meh until I found out about this trick where you change just one note in the chord voicing that makes everything sound better. So today I'm going to show you exactly how to transform basic chords like this into this. Hey everybody, Jeff Schneider here, back again with more chord theory and soloing tips for jazz, R&B, and gospel musicians. Now, in that fancy chord progression I just played, did you notice that each one of those chords had something in common? Take another listen and see if you can pick up on what I'm doing here. Maybe you noticed that each chord is major, and that's true, but there's something else going on. You see, if you take a C major chord and add the 9 or the 2, you get a C add 9 chord. Sounds nice, but we're still not there yet. And that's where today's one-note upgrade comes into play. And after I tell you what it is, I'm gonna show you how and why this magic chord is, well, so fucking good. All right, so let's take that C add 9 chord again. And all we're gonna do is drop the E, the third, down an octave. Now right away we have a more interesting sound, and there are a couple reasons why. First of all, we went from this closed position voicing to a more open, spread out voicing that still has that nice little rub there in the middle. But the other thing that makes this chord so special is the fact that the third is in the bass. Okay, so what's so special about that? Well, it all comes down to harmonic gravity, and more specifically, a lack of harmonic gravity. You see, when you've got the root in the bottom voice of a chord, it kind of holds the whole thing in place. It weighs it down. And that can be a good thing if you want to emphasize arriving at a harmonic destination, like resolving to the one chord at the end of a song. But when you put a note in the bass that's not the root, like the third, you get a much floatier sound. And in a second, I'll tell you how that becomes especially useful when playing jazz and R&B. But first, check out the difference between these two chord progressions. The second version ends with a C major chord with the third in the bass, and that non-root bass note completely changes the vibe. It feels like there's more to the story, while the C major with the root in the bass feels like the end. But that harmonic float really shines when you break out of those basic 1-4-5-1 progressions and start messing around with these kinds of chord changes. By the way, did you catch the chord functions in that progression? Take another listen, just see if you can figure out what key I'm in. All right, I'm kind of messing with you. I don't even know what key I'm in or what these chord functions are. I'm just playing random add 9 chords with the third in the bass. And even though the chords are completely random, they still sound good. And that's because of how harmonically buoyant each chord is. There aren't any roots weighing us down. And by the way, cranking out a chord like this in C major isn't such a big deal. But if you want to be able to transpose these voicings in other keys, I highly recommend using my chord scale charts as a quick reference when putting numbers to notes. So for instance, the chord recipe for the voicing we've been playing is 3-1-2-5. If you want to play it in E major, go to the E major chart and there you'll see which note names correspond with each number. And if you don't have these charts already, you can download them for free at the link in the description below. Now later in this video, I'm going to show you another exercise that'll help you master these chords in other keys. But first, let's add some extra sauce to our C add 9 over E chord. See if you can figure out what I'm doing here. We've still got that third in the bass and that 9 in the middle, but now I've also added the 7. So we've got a C major 9 over E chord. And while I really like that crunch there in the middle, you can also jump the 7 up the octave to get this voicing. I love this one too. Now here's a fun and effective exercise you can practice to get these chord voicings under your fingers. Pair a basic melody like Mary Had a Little Lamb with a chord voicing you like, and do this. So what did I do there? I took the same voicing, 3-1-2-5-7, and harmonized the melody with it. Remember, the melody note is always going to be the 7. So if your melody note is E and E is the 7, you have to ask yourself, in what key is E the 7th note of the scale? Again, in what key is E the 7th note of the scale? Well, E is the 7th note in the key of F. So we're going to be playing an F major 9 over A chord. I call this top-down reharmonization, and it works great for coming up with new chords for existing melodies. It's so important to keep in mind what scale degree number is on the top of the voicing you're playing. That's why in my chord pack, Sick Chords Volume 1, I organize the chord voicings by what note is in the top voice. And trust me, it makes reharmonizing so much easier. By the way, if you don't have Sick Chords Volume 1, now's a great time to snag it because I've linked up a sick deal, see what I did there, on the Sick Chords Everything bundle in the description below. Anyway, now that you know what's going on under the hood here, take one more listen and look at the chords from the progression I played at the beginning of this video. And you'll notice I'm using a combination of some of the different voicing variations we've covered thus far. Earlier in the video, I asked you that trick question about what the chord functions were in the random chord progression I made up. But just because I was messing with you doesn't mean you should skip out on learning how to analyze chord progressions that do make harmonic sense. What I'm trying to say is knowing your music theory will unlock a world of chord progressions that you can implement in your playing. And for all you jazz and R&B fans, a great place to start is my video, The 7 Music Theory Secrets That'll Instantly Funk Up Your Chords. And you can check that out right over here, and I'll see you over there.